Hello, I'm Debs. Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to my little studio today. Okay, so as we've been splashing around in water for a few weeks with various different water scenes, this week thought I'd changed up a little bit and we're going to be painting this painting here, Beauty in the Shadows. Gorgeous lion here coming out of the shadows with all those lovely colours hitting his beautiful mane. So let's go on to the colours that I chose and let's get painting. So let's have a quick look at the sort of colours I used there. Now you see a couple of inks there and a gouache there. That was what I used to tone my paper, which I'll tell you all about as we go along in the video. In addition to those, I've got a few pastel pencils. As I always say with the pencils, it's not essential. You can go straight in with pastels, but I just find it easier to do my sketch and things in the pastel pencils. So obviously we've got a selection of pastels there, going from really, really dark through our mid-tones up to our sort of russets and oranges and through to sort of those golden yellows. Also got a few paintbrushes there that I use for blending, also a pan pastel soft tool, and some sponges and a household paintbrush. All right, so obviously, as I always say to you, don't panic too much if you don't have these exact colours. It really doesn't matter. Just choose something along similar lines from your own palette. Okay, so let's get painting. Okay, so this is painted on 20 by 16, larger than I normally go, but as this lion was so majestic, I thought I'll go wild and do him a little bit bigger. And I've painted him on Luxe Archival sanded paper. Now, lovely reference photo I found over on Unsplash this week. I popped the link down below for you because unfortunately I haven't been able to get hold of the photographer to ask for his permission to show it in the video. So, but you can pop on over to Unsplash, download it for yourself and either have a go at painting or just see my reference photo. Okay, so as I've gone sort of bigger on my paper, that's going to use up a lot of pastels if I do that all in pastels. So I've toned my paper, as I mentioned, in the colours. Now I used a blue and a red ink, and I mixed that with a little bit of gouache just to darken it down. And I find the easiest way to tone your paper is literally just slightly damp your paper down. Get an old paintbrush or whatever, household paintbrush, and just slightly damp the paper. Have your inks or your watercolour or gouache mixed up to a very thin consistency, and just go to do a few coats until you get this sort of depth that you want. Now, obviously, just a word of caution: make sure obviously the paper that you're using does accept water. That's why I tend to prefer a sanded paper. My favourite's Fisher or Luxe Archival because they take a good wet, either to tone your paper or a good wet underpainting without buckling or ruining it. And I suggest using sort of something that will allow you, that sinks into the paper, so it will allow you to get all your layers. So something like a watercolour, gouache, or inks, they're great for this particular purpose of toning your paper. And so after letting my paper dry, the first thing I did was get myself a very light sketch underneath there. Just chosen a pastel pencil, and just getting that for those of you that have seen me before, I like to use a pastel pencil. I feel a little bit more comfy with them. So I've chosen a few different tones in here. And I've chosen the colours to, that are going to sort of like go in with my finished painting of soft pastel. So I've chosen sort of similar colours that I'm going to use. And I've just started with, as I say, a couple of tones. I used a black pencil. Now, I don't often use black, but in this instance I have, because the paper is dark. I want to make sure that those darker areas of his mouth and nose and things, they're really dark and vivid. I go in later with soft pastels and add a little bit of colour to them. But for the moment, to get them in, I pop those in black. And so I started with his main features, getting those eyes in the right place, his nose and his mouth, and then sort of working my way out from there. Now, normally I would sort of always say start off with your next darkest, but in this case I've decided to get my main sketch in a mid-tone, so, I can lighten or darken from there. So I've chosen sort of like a mid-tone to begin with, and I'll then put another darker tone, and I'm letting the paper itself be the sort of next darkest tone. So basically there's going to be sort of 4 or 5 values in here that I'm getting down. And as you can see, I've used it, indicated where my grasses are going to go. Now I want to keep my background sort of fairly inconspicuous, it doesn't need to jump out of the paper. So that's going to have a nice sort of light feel to it, very loose in the background there, and then getting our detail in on our lion. And so, as you can see, just putting a few tones down there, already that line is beginning to come out of the paper. So what I want to do now is I want to just pop a little bit more colour in my background. As I say, we're going to keep it very loose here, but I want a little bit more colour in there. So that I can get the balance of the lion. I want to know how dark that background's going to be so I can make sure that the lion's in balance with what's going on behind him. So I've come in first with my deepest, darkest tone, and I'm looking at the reference photo. Obviously, when you look at it, you can hardly see the subtle changes that are going on in there, but they are there. So I kind of want to give an indication of that and an indication of where the light's starting to come in. So I popped my darkest tone in, and then my sort of next level up, that lovely rich burgundy, the same colours that I'm going to be using in the lion there. So you can see me now. I just did a very light because I don't need to put huge amounts on there, because obviously I've got that dark underpainting. So I just put a very light layer of a couple of things, and you just saw me there come in with a sponge and just sort of blend it in, trying to keep my sponge sort of gestural in the way that the grasses are growing, getting that feel straight on in all those underlayers that are going on underneath all of our grasses, so that we've got that gesture and that feel right from the get-go. And so now, obviously, I've given myself a good idea of where I'm going. Already you can see just with those few colours how the line is starting to come out of the background, and I've got a good sort of balance of colours, and I'm happy with those lovely rich burgundies and things. They will really complement the gorgeous oranges and goldens we're going to put on his mane. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to put a little bit more colour in the line, and let's start building up his layers now. So I've started off with my darkest value, all the areas, looking at my reference photo, all the areas of those that are in shade. Now the left hand side of this picture, as you look at him, obviously that is all in the shadows. So what I'm trying to do is use that dark tone there and that I'm using in the background, and I'm pulling that into his mane, and then I'll be pulling the colours of his mane out into the grass. I want all that sort of left-hand side to be soft, soft edges, just sort of disappearing and coming back, and so you're not quite sure whether it's mane or grass or whatever. And then we can get our more detail in and brighten things up on the left side where that last of the sunshine is just hitting his mane there and creating all those gorgeous vivid colours. And so now I've got sort of like a good idea of the darkest areas in him. So coming up the value scale a little bit and using like a lovely rich burgundy now, and using that in the areas where it starts to sort of go between light and dark, and you've got those sort of mid-tones going on there. And I work between the darkest value and this value for a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes, and before I sort of like add some more colour. But you'll see me working between the two for a couple of mows. So I'll pop on a little bit of music, and you can watch me go through this part of the process. All right, see you in a mo. And so the pastel's starting to move around a little bit on the paper there. One of the things I really wanted to do, I loved his mane and I love the colours going through it. So what I want to do is try and give the density of that. So I'm sort of using my pastels right from the start in the direction that the coat is flowing, and I'm blending as I go so that I've got a really nice soft out of focus background, these background layers to our lion. And so now what I'm doing is coming up the value scale, and I'm going to add some of those really lovely vivid colours. And the first thing I went to my lightest areas first, and I'm just looking at my reference photos, seeing where that sunshine is hitting the lion, sort of those brightest spark parts that are on his legs there and underneath his tummy coming through to the leg on the other side. So pop those in first, and obviously around his muzzle and things, pop that in first, and now I'm going in with that gorgeous rich sort of rusty colour there, and I want that lovely red to come through underneath those goldens that we're going to put on the top. I want that really, really nice richness to come through. So as I say, using a couple of tones as I usually do in any one area, just one ever so slightly lighter than the other, and coming back in with my darker tone, so that I'm sort of pulling one area through to the other. And that's what you're going to see me do now, is literally I'm going through the different tones as I did with the pencil, and just sort of merging them together to give us that nice soft out of focus background with the feel and the richness of those colours. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using my pastels in the direction in general of how things are going to go in the end. I'm giving myself a good start. There's no point fighting with yourself later on, because you've sort of got things going off in the wrong direction. And obviously his mane is we have to make it feel like it's his mane. So in this layer, you see me when I blend, and as I'm using my pastels, everything I'm doing is in the direction that it's going to actually end up. Okay, so I'll let you watch me just go through this process for a few minutes, and I'll pop back in a mo. So as you can see, we're starting to get those lovely blends going on of the colours there. And the purpose of this, as I say, is to give myself that nice soft out of focus background there. So as I'm sort of continuing through, that's what I'm doing. These pastels are starting to merge together, and you're seeing me sort of pull the pastels. Sometimes I do it with the pastels, and sometimes I blend. I really want to create this softness. So I'm using a mixture of things. Sometimes it's my finger to sort of whoosh out through the mane, or sometimes I come in, I've got a little tiny sponge, which is the end of one of those soft pan pastel tools that I use to kind of blend in those little areas around his eyes and nose and all that sort of delicate area there. So I hope you're enjoying the video and enjoying seeing our lion starting to come out of the shadows. If you are, please do give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and subscribe to my channel. That would be really nice. Or obviously, if you'd like to see the sort of video slowed down, where you can sort of see my strokes going down, in a slower fashion, and see exactly what I'm doing. And obviously I can give more information and what I'm actually doing, explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing things. Then consider joining me over on Patreon. I'd love to see you over there. And, I've got a few videos built up over there already. So it'd be lovely to have some patrons to come and join me. Okay, so I'll let you watch me going on through putting these sort of pastels together, getting some more pastel on that paper, and start building up the richness of this gorgeous lion. All right, I'll see you in a mo. And so really starting to get some lovely colour and blending going on there. And you might have noticed that I've introduced a couple more colours all along sort of similar lines. You know, I'm using the sort of rusty reds and ochres and things. And I've added a few more little colours in there just to help me. And as you can see there now, going around the outside of his mane where it's getting that light now and coming up the value scale even more. But as I say, doing it incrementally. And obviously you've seen me, I go around randomly. I don't necessarily sort of work from, you know, one corner to the other corner systematically and complete every area. I prefer to work through a painting and build it all up simultaneously. So every now and again, you kind of see me pop off into the background, add a few, you know, a bit more depth into the background there, and then come back to my lion, you know, one side of my lion, then the other. Literally, I do it as I see it. What's most obvious to me, I find that the easiest way to work, and it helps the painting build up helps the painting build up in a sort of more natural and organic way, really, and you're getting a good depth within the painting. And I just find it easier to work that way, because I often stop and start. The way my life is, I stop and start. So I'm often having to put my pastels down and then come back. So sometimes, it's purely because that's the case. I've come back and I've gone to a different place. But I prefer to do it this way. But obviously, if you prefer, completing an area, you can do that. It's each to their own. There's no right or wrong in art. This is just the way I do it, and the way I prefer to work, doing things as I see them, and sort of working in general through from dark to light, as is always a good idea if you can with pastels. And so, as you can see, I popped over to the grasses, added a little bit more richness and depth to those. And as I say, on his mane, popping a little bit, lighter and brighter where that sunshine's, coming through, because that's it. I really want to sort of have half of him in shadow and then this gorgeous, brilliant, vibrant colour going through. So as when I'm in the background and things, I'm still keeping my strokes fairly loose. I still want it to be, fairly out of focus, nothing too detailed. Let's keep the detail to the line, and the background can, sort of merge into itself. So I think I'm sort of starting to get the feel of him. He's starting to come out the paper, and, those base layers are looking good. So far, so good. And my first attempt at a line's not going too bad so far. So really happy with progress so far. So come back and join me next week, and I'll bring this line to its conclusion, and you can see how we sort of build up those layers even further. Thank you so much for watching and spending some of your time with me. I really do appreciate it. I wish you a lovely week. Come back and join me next week. Give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video, or please do subscribe, and then I can keep you up to date when anything new comes up. Thanks so much once again. Have a lovely week and happy painting.